We've just got a great commercial project downtown. Commercial building. No one's buying commercial buildings. You know what that commercial building's next to? The most ultra high-end residential property in this town.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Jeremy Delk. Born and raised in a small town and from a blue-collar household, his parents worked for the post office. However, Jeremy always held much bigger dreams, and he longed to experience the world outside his small hometown of Bardstown, Kentucky. By the age of 19, he was earning $30,000 to $50,000 a day as a day trader from the desk of his college classroom. He felt invincible. But as quickly as the money came, it vanished just as fast. After amassing almost $2 million in his early 20s as a day trader, it took him only 4 days to lose it all. Moving on to Wall Street, eventually he decided to go out on his own. Today, more than 20 years later, Delk Enterprises has holdings in biotech and healthcare, consumer brands, technology, building materials, and real estate development, one of our favorite. Jeremy now focuses on investing in and advising entrepreneurs through speaking. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited as well, man. We're gonna have a great conversation. We were talking about Asheville, and you have a little experience coming down here to Asheville, North Carolina. And one of the things is, and you may know this, but the Biltmore was built by George Vanderbilt, and unfortunately, the Vanderbilts have a unfortunate family history about making a lot of money and then losing a lot of money over a period of time. And one of the things we're passionate on this show is teaching, not only the current generation, but also the next generation, how to earn money, how to keep money, and these financial skills. And I think your life story is just going to be a wonderful illustration of that. So maybe you could start off by sharing a little bit about your story, how you got to this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just sidebar. So was it George or Cornelius, right? I'm a big architecture guy, so I did the architectural thing. So was it Cornelius the one that blew it? Or?
George built it. Cornelius, I believe, was his father, who had the was it the shipping empire, and then George, and then the succeeding generations are the ones that ultimately blew it, unfortunately. So gotcha. I'm going to go and double check all my facts here.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's so true what you said. I look at deals every day, right? And I've got a group that's come to me to do a hospitality project, and we're in Lexington, Kentucky. So a bunch of University of Kentucky athletes, right? So some big ones, right? Mainly from basketball, but we've got some football guys now. And so now these groups are now wanting to kind of come back, and they don't know. It's the lack of education sometimes in advisors is crazy. But one of the guys, I was like, well, does he even have, because it's not a project, but it's not a small project either. And I'm like, does he even have that kind of money to go through talking about this particular athlete? And like, man, he had a massive contract. I mean, I think he's made a lot of money. I'm like, it's not what you make, buddy. It's what you keep. Right. And I think that's just kind of exactly to your point. And that financial literacy that just isn't taught sometimes. And then and also doesn't always come in, that whole idea from saving for a day. And I think it's raining out here literally, and I think probably figuratively here soon too. So just definitely can't agree with that more. I'm a native from Kentucky, to answer your question. About an hour south of here in Bardstown, Kentucky. So we're the bourbon capital.
Oh yeah, I know bourbon. So, I got some bars. Yeah.
Yep. Jim Beam. I mean, those are Blanton's, obviously really hot. Woodford Reserve down the street, but small town USA, small town kid. And growing up, I always had this kind of yearning, kind of like a big fish, small pond mentality, where I always wanted to kind of go and do more, see more, and be more. And that's led me to a very windy road. A book that defines my life is called Without a Plan, because where I've kind of journeyed, there's never been any kind of beacon, but very windy road. I always had this mission to get to Wall Street, and I ended up there for a pretty successful but short-lived career on Wall Street. But the path that got me there was very windy and tumultuous and filled with massive ups and massive downs. But that's kind of what shapes us. And I think you know, that level as you go through life in general, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but especially entrepreneurship, that's actually probably a slip of tongue with true sometimes. But as you go through it, you know, if you can just keep moving forward, and not dwell, but look back at some of the, not the good times, good times come and go, but really the bad times, that's really what shapes you. And it gives you that confidence to take the next bet, to take the next step forward. So yeah,
that's such a good point. And, you know, I was, you know, I like to say, like, with adversity comes, you know, durability, comes resiliency. Right. And that's one of, you mentioned sports and athletes, and, you know, we learn this as athletes, right? We see that, you know, we watch athletes, we know anybody that's been experiencing it, but it's almost like we've forgotten it as a society. You know, we want to shield our children from pain. We don't, you know, we want to say, oh no, we're gonna you know, give this person something so that they, you know, they can get to where somebody else is. And I think what we learn as entrepreneurs, what we learn as athletes, is that if you don't learn about those pitfalls, this goes back to the Vanderbilt story. If you don't learn about the losses, if you don't learn about the pitfalls, if you only know the upside, then you're not only are you not going to appreciate it, but I think you're going to be doomed to lose it ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of my biggest fears. I don't know your background, but just on the, you know, that whole adage, I'll mess it up, but, you know, hard times make great men, easy times make weak men. Right.
He said, that's even better. I got to write that down.
That's my biggest fear. Right. Is, you know, is fucking up my kids, truthfully. Right. Is they're growing way different than I grew up, which I'm thankful for. But like, also they're not having any, because we protect and insulate. You try to give them lessons that are different, but they're never going to be as hard charging, crazy. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but that's something I truly struggle with. And I've come to peace with. Eventually they're going to be who they're going to be, no matter what you do. But just trying to be there and be a loving, supporting component and just kind of steering them. But I gave up a few years ago, through some really good counsel and some advice from friends and stuff, that like, you just got to let them go. Right. Because, and I'm trying to, I know your boys are a little bit older than mine. You're 11 and 13, I think you said, 13, right? I've got a 9 and 4-year-old. The 4-year-old, my dog is going to be me. We're all scared of her. She's an animal, but like, they're probably not going to be that way. And that's okay. But, you know, just make good people, right? That's the piece that's kind of tough. And like, you know, you just, Jack, you know, with your kids, you know, hustling and working a little bit at holiday parties and making a few $100 just to try and, if they want to be entrepreneurs, I can really be helpful to them, but I don't know if that's their path. And
that's a beautiful thing. I want to come back to that, because that's really something that I think, like you, Jeremy, I spent a lot of time thinking about, because our life is way different than mine growing up. My mom was now I say she was a teacher, but she was really an assistant teacher, you know, so she was making like 30 grand a year. My father passed away when I was 5. I had a stepfather. He was a contractor. He did fine. But, you know, I made more the first year I got out of school than either of my parents ever did. And, you know, it's just, you know, that helped teach me a lot of stuff, because I had to grind and do different things. But you know, in your intro, you know, I talked about, you know, some of the things that you've gone through. But maybe you could tell us about some of those early losses, and, you know, what it taught you, and then ultimately what you like, how you use that in your next stage in life.
I'm laughing. So you definitely got to listen to the book on the way up to Maine, because like, we're kindred spirits. I mean, very, very similar. Like, both my mom and my stepfather worked at the post office. So I had that blue collar type of upbringing. I lost my dad when I was 7. So like, very, very similar stories. But like, I think the piece that you go through is just that resilience, because you have to go through, like, we have all experienced trauma, loss, defeat, failure. We've all experienced it, like, as humanity. What I found personally, and this is a lot of introspective stuff with, you know, sitting on a couch with the therapist for a long time, and then analyzing deals that went well and deals that didn't go through, and doing that autopsy. What I've analyzed is that if you have the courage to look back and not dwell or be a victim, but understand and learn from it, you've never really failed, right? You've learned. Making the same mistake because you haven't educated, that's different mentality. That's the definition of insanity. But as long as you're kind of going through and learning, you don't know what's behind door number two. It's just that level of kind of keeping on going. And that's that's kind of what's done it for me. So just quick tidbit story, and because you made more money. Like, so I had like a $30,000 inheritance when my dad passed away, and my mom thankfully always just let me kind of go do my thing. Right. I was always that kid that's kind of going through. So I dreamed about going to New York, only wanted to go to New York because, my education, this is, internet had just kind of come out. This is, 96, 97. But my only, understanding of New York was like The Godfather. And my last name is Delk. So I'm not going to be in the mob.
Great movie. Dude, those movies are so good.
And Wall Street, like that was like, that's what New York was. Right. So that got me interested. And my mom had put some money in like a mutual fund and I just started reading. I was reading like Raging Bull newsletters online. I was Investor Business Daily, Wall Street Journal, etc. So I just self-taught in a very bull market, started day trading, and I turned that 30 grand into a couple $1 million in about 2 years, which was a huge accomplishment, huge feat, a lot of luck. And thankfully, and I say this in retrospect, it happened, it was horrible, but thankfully I blew it up in 4 days. I lost everything.
Wow.
And it was probably the best lesson that happened to me for multiple reasons. One, 19-year-old kid, full of testosterone, you're not going to tell me wait anything, right? I was at school in Providence, Rhode Island, decent looking kid. I was going down a path like a fake world, right? That just doesn't, everything just doesn't go that well for you for that forever. So it taught me a ton about humility, and you're never, too smart to learn. You're always like, that's why I love entrepreneurship. And I've been industry agnostic in what I invest, because business is business. So I love that learning and discovery phase. That's what I really enjoy about it, and the creativity. But the biggest taught me is like, you have a choice, right? And we all do. Like, I had a choice when I blew up $2 million. My story could have been young kid, lost his father, went to college on a scholarship, and I wasn't a good student, but I worked my ass off my senior in high school. Day traded, made a couple $1 million, went bust because everyone did. It was the .com era. So it's just bad luck. And I went back home to Bardstown and became a successful fill in the blank. That would have been an okay story, but it wasn't going to be my story. I was besides the money, I squandered what my dad left me. I was just self-hate. It was a disaster. I bought a condo by that time, and my freshman summer, like every freshman does, right? I bought a 20-foot tall ceilings, double fireplace. I was living the life of a mid 30-year-old bachelor at 19. So I had these liabilities, even though I'd acquired them. You got HOA fees, rent, HOA fees, mortgages. You had all these things that go through, and your mom, the assistant teacher, my parents were both making, money at the post office, but, middle class, upper is a stretch. I think middle class. So while she would, not my mom and said would give the shirt off their back, they didn't have the ability to.
They couldn't bail you.
So
they couldn't,
so which was great, because if I had a safety net, it wouldn't have worked out. So I wouldn't be who I was, which is back to the point of fucking up your kids, because it's just that knee-jerk reaction to go through and help them.
Yes.
And the fact that I had my back against the wall, that's how I've lived my life, is like, this is on you, buddy. Figure it out. Like, that level of pressure, right, has kind of pushed me to be where I am. So, I had that choice, and I went out and started hustling odd job to odd job to odd job, renting apartment, Abercrombie and Fitch, doing landscaping, which I had no clue how to do. Lasted like a week, but
you look like you can swing a shovel.
But I was renting apartments, and just through happenstance, in my fourth job, started meeting this guy. I got a commission every time I sold a rental unit, and this guy had relocated to Boston and was in temporary corporate housing with a company called Fidelity Investments. And I'm just talking to him. It's this 19-year-old kid who had a pretty good breadth and market knowledge, but no technical skills other than, long and shorts. I wasn't doing any option strategies, but I just had a pretty good understanding of two Qualcomm and JDS Uniphase, because that's what I was doing.
I traded those.
And this dude's like, who the fuck, kid, right? Where are you? And then he's like, we consider a job on Wall Street. Meanwhile, like no path how to get there, but that's what I always wanted to do. But yeah, that's great. But I'm from Kentucky. Before I moved, I had like more of a Kentucky accent. Like, I'm from Kentucky. I don't have a college degree. Like, yeah, it's just not for me. And he's like, well, what if I gave you a chance? And, a 3-month process of background checks, all the stuff that you've got to go through.
Yeah.
I got the job, and
nice.
And I still finished, but I converted to night college and started working full time. And that's so. And then I rebuilt myself. Ended up moving to New York. Got transferred to Fidelity in New York on Wall Street. So like at 20, I was the youngest trader at Fidelity Investments history. Series 7, 63, all those things at 20 years old. So 17-year-old me had no way, and you couldn't script that. You couldn't script that journey for 3 years. But then I was back. I'd made it back in 3 years, and then 2021, 2021, I resigned from Fidelity. Similar to you, making twice as much to both of my parents, right? My mom and my stepdad. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you, kid? Like, you just blew up $2 million. You finally stabilized yourself. Now you're in the most expensive city in the world, and you're going to fucking quit. I'm like, but I wasn't, like, I just saw myself dying, and, dying in creativity and emotion. Corporate America is for probably a big part of the population. Entrepreneurs don't really throw in.
They don't fit in there. Yeah.
They don't. But I think a lot of them are very scared, and maybe some of your listeners can relate to this. It took them so long to take that leap because they were so scared of the outcome. And I guess this very long rhetorical component to like that's why $2 million blowing up was the best for me. Because like, fuck, I'm not losing $2 million. I'm just losing an income. I've proven that I can come back and make the money at 20 years old, 21 years old to myself. So like, I didn't have to wait till 40 when I actually have real responsibilities with kids and mortgages and houses and all that stuff. So that blow is what gave me the courage to say, fuck it. It's the worst can happen. Fucking lose it. Can go again.
And that's so, and that's,
but you wouldn't have that if you didn't have that experience and take those chances. Now I'm a sicko and probably not normal. I don't recommend you do. This is not advice, by the way. But there's all lessons that you can learn, and it's all about how did they happen, to you, or they happen for you, right? I think that's the piece.
Today's show is sponsored by Money Insights and their investment optimizer strategy. In my book, I share how I use this same strategy starting over a decade ago to invest my money in 2 places at one time. This strategy has been used by the wealthiest for generations for estate planning, minimizing taxes, preserving wealth, and increasing stability for their investments. Now you can do the same thing. In addition, you can build a plan to build an emergency fund, pay for college, fund a business, plan for retirement, and ultimately optimize your total financial picture. To find out more information, check us out at the banking link at nextlevelincome.com. Yeah, and that is so important. I think there's a lot of things, and you mentioned the kindred spirits. Like we can trace back a few things. One of the things that I've come to realize is, and I love this expression, with finitude comes gratitude. When you realize something's finite and it might end, and unfortunately, for us, Jeremy, when you lose a parent at such a young age, Malcolm Gladwell writes about this. He talks about how there's this uncanny correlation between like U.S. presidents, CEOs that have lost a parent. And I didn't realize this until I read this in, like 10 years ago. And I said, wait a minute, why is that? Now, as an analytical guy, as an engineer, I look at it and I thought of it like an equation. I said, well, yeah, if you divide anything by infinity, like when we're young, right? You think you're invincible. Like you say that in your bio, like, you have like this invincibility. Most of us do when we feel young. We think we're going to live forever. We don't have a concept, of mortality. So if you divide your time, by infinity, the value is it's hard to put a place on it. As soon as you know that life is finite and you might not live another day. And really, when my best friend died when I was 19, it really defined that, because as a 19-year-old, he was 18. I was like, well, I might not live to see tomorrow. Now what? Whereas when I was a kid, I knew deep down that I needed to do something with my life. But I think it's one of those things that you would never wish on somebody, yet at the same time, it gives you this perspective on your life that makes it so important. And you also mentioned, I forget how you said it, but my boys, they make mistakes, right? And I say, listen, it's okay to make mistakes. I said, but you got to learn from them. That's what you were talking about in the context. Like, do you learn from your mistakes, or do you go and repeat them? And I said, look, you're not stupid if you make a mistake, but I will tell you what, if you keep making that same mistake, now you're stupid. Like, you've got to learn from that mistake. And when you don't learn from it, it's kind of pointless at that point. And I was chuckling at your story of walking away, because my buddy, when I left the med device space, I was in a leadership role, and I was making quite a bit more than he was, and he was in a good spot too. And I told him, I was like, hey man, yeah, I'm leaving, I'm resigning. He's like, do you hate money, Chris? What's wrong with you? I said, no, dude. Like, but there's this opportunity that I'm giving up and doing that. So you walk away from Wall Street, which again, it's crazy, right? I know a lot of people are like shaking their heads that are maybe earlier on in their journey, but as entrepreneurs that have been somewhat handcuffed in corporate America, right? We can relate to this, but what was the thought process that went through your head as you did that? And, what are you up to now after you've left that role now? What, almost 2 years on, right?
Yeah. Well, 20 years now. Delk Enterprises is 20
years
now.
2001. I apologize. I heard. Yeah.
So it worked. It was the right move. 20 years later, it's still Delk Enterprises. Just quick, that was Malcolm Gladwell. I want to check that out. Yeah. I didn't know that stat, but that makes so much sense about the lost parent thing.
I'll pull it up. I forget if it was Outliers or if it was David versus Goliath, but I'll
let me know, because I just Googled it while you said that. So for me, and I want to kind of just went through, because I know we are short on time, but for me, why I left and why I don't sound like I'm from Kentucky anymore. I had so many ideas, convinced myself I knew they were good ideas, and they just fucking wouldn't listen to me, or like like, hey man, just keep your head down, kid. And I thought, like, fuck, maybe they just think I'm an idiot because I sound like I'm like a hillbilly, right? And I didn't have a strong accent. I was like a preppy kid. I wasn't even a hillbilly kid, but I was a prep kid with that accent. So I even tried to change my dialect and how I speak to maybe see they would listen. And then what I realized is it's a different game. Like, all you need to do, and especially big multinationals, don't fuck up. Like, don't expect, don't get canceled. Don't but just keep status quo. And being outside the box is not a good thing in that world. And that's why I like, dude, this guy, I was driving he was driving a Bentley, but he was 40 years my senior. Like, fuck that, I couldn't do it. So I was just like, I won't be happy. I have to have that creative stuff. So last 20 years has been, I started a real estate development company, building materials. We've done a lot in healthcare, regenerative medicine, animal health. We've got a company we started in March 2020, which was a great time, doing biological age and epigenetics.
Love that space.
We've taken from zero to like $15 million in top line in a very short period of time. Just published a great study with Harvard. I'm doing these podcasts, kind of coaching, and like, I wrote my book, just to full circle it. I wrote my book, which is titled Without a Plan. Hit that one point that you just kind of talked about. We'll go to Malcolm Gladwell, and that we don't have a finite amount of time. And what I do with most coaching and consulting clients is just make that real. Like, I've lived a pretty successful life. I've taken companies public, I've taken them private, Inc. 500, top 24 companies in the US, top 4 in healthcare. I've done some really cool things, and none of it has been with a 200-page multi-pronged step plan. I had a direction of where I wanted to go and just started. And that was a big part of my messaging, is that you're not promised tomorrow. If it makes sense to, and that's at everything, fucking ask the girl to marry you, to buy the company, make the hire, do the deal, expand the product line, buy the company, whatever that is, just do it. because everyone, so will suffer from this paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
Right now, let's go to real estate. Like I know you got a bunch of real estate guys. Let's go to real estate. Everyone's fucking scared, dude. I've just fucking bought 3 multi-million-dollar deals, fucking leaning in because everyone's fucking scared. Like we've just got a great commercial project downtown, commercial building. No one's buying commercial buildings. You know what that commercial building's next to? The most ultra high-end residential property in this town. It ain't going to be a commercial building very long. It's gonna be condos. Like, so like,
you
gotta look, you gotta look at things in a different lens.
Yes.
And the deal still kills. It's going to be a massive IRR at 7%. So like, you got to look where real money, where things are going, not what you're getting fed in the news and the media, right?
Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck's going to be,
where it's going to go, man. Exactly.
Yeah. The media. Yeah. Unfortunately, the media doesn't help you,
Well, like it does help me. It doesn't help the most. It helps me because what the fuck they're saying, just fucking do the exact opposite. Right?
Yeah.
It fucking helps me.
Well, there you go.
But it doesn't help most people. Yeah.
They don't help with the, they prey on people's fears, right? And it's like, oh, be scared. Like, look what happened. Look at that. But yeah, it takes a special person. I think that's what's different about entrepreneurs is you look forward, you say, okay, what's possible? You take the risk. Corporate America, it's about not taking risk because if you take too much risk, you're going to get fired. And that's not helpful if you want to maintain that role. But the people that I love talking about this on the show, which is I am so optimistic about the future of this country, the world. People talk about the environment, they talk about energy crisis, population crisis. I mean, you name it. There's a crisis going on right now, but entrepreneurs seem to always come up with solutions and do that. And that's what's amazing about America is that we have this culture, this resiliency, this ability to do that. And if we don't fall prey to the news cycles or even some politicians that tell you, hey, you can't do that, or you're destined to fail because of this, or you're in the spot you are, but if we look forward, not backward, and look at what's possible and use our strength that we've gained from the past, then it's amazing what's possible.
Yeah. I think the kind of just easy rule of thumb that you can do, whether that's, media, third party, politics, you said, and unfortunately, more times than that, it's the friend, it's the spouse, it's someone else. And I think the best thing I always kind of do is like, whenever they say you can't be done, they're talking about themselves, not you.
I love that. Yeah. And that's a great point. Cause as the ego comes up to the surface, if they say, oh yeah, you can do it, what they have to do is look in the mirror and say, well,
they can't,
if Jeremy can do it, because it's a choice he made, that means I'm not doing it because it's a choice that I made. And people have a really hard time doing that. That's why it's so important to choose your spouse, to choose your partners, to choose your friends so carefully in this space, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So now fast forward to today. I know you kind of caught us up to that point. Who are you working with? You mentioned working and coaching entrepreneurs. We're going to have a link to your book in the show notes here, and we'll give you a chance to tell the audience where to get that before we sign off here. But who are you working with? Like, you got your own stuff going on. You said you also coach and help others grow their businesses and get to the point where they can take the next step.
Yeah. So I'm an investor. I'm a capitalist investor that likes to make money, but secondarily, or actually that's secondary to the primary goal is like, I like learning and I like winning to disrupt something. I love being told you can't do it. Fucking great. Tell me I can't do it. And then watch me go. Like, that's the biggest motivation to me. So I also like figuring out complex problems. So I'm, I'll talk about mindset, talk about other things, but like, I'm not the guy that you call if I want to grow my business 7% year over year and kind of go through. Like, I like to come in when there's a dumpster fire going on, or you've just been at $10 million a year every single year and just can't get to 20, or whatever those pieces are. I like to kind of come in and help, because that's where I can really add the most value. So it started with I get deals and decks all the time, and it kind of helps me. It lowers my due diligence cost, but a lot of times it gets me to know the entrepreneur more. And if I just add value to them and there's not an investment opportunity, that's okay. I'm happy doing it. But a lot of times it's led to me being a partner and an investor, because so many people that are struggling, and it doesn't have to be you're doing 10 million, you could be doing 1 million, like wherever they are, and they're doing 1 billion. It doesn't really matter. But where I'm able to add the most value is kind of just helping them, get out of their own way and look at it from a different piece, because I've been in so many different industries, like from that agnostic approach. So that's been kind of the most fun for me.
Yeah. I love that. Sam Zell in his book, which God rest his soul, it's a phenomenal book if you haven't read it, and you're listening today. Am I being too subtle? He's like you, Jeremy. He's agnostic. He got to start in real estate. Can relate like that. But he was a businessman. He looked at things, and he was big on relationships. He was big on forming those relationships, those connections, but also on the long-term trust of the people that he worked with. And I love what you said. When you coach people and you work with people and you look to help them, you get to know them in a very, very personal way. And if you can add value, then a lot of times those partnerships can arise out of that.
Because most of the time they come in and I need to raise $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, right? But that doesn't solve their problem. Gives them resources to then solve the problem. So I'd like to get a little bit deeper. So at Delk Enterprises, you get the website, it's strategic capital. Yes, we have cash, but most of the time we can get you to a quicker result because we have the shared services, right? You need hands, you need marketing, you need regulatory, what is it that you need, then you can get that. Because just giving you the money, then you have to go and deploy that capital. So I try to shorten that value chain. And that's whether it's human resources or software or just looking at it from perspective.
Yeah. I love it. So if somebody's listening today, got a business owner, they want to scale to the next level, they want to get in touch with you, or they just want to read a copy of your book, get some more inspiration from your story, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy S. Delk on all socials. Instagram's probably a bigger Facebook, but I actually have Instagram on my phone. The rest of it's my team that will respond to you. And jeremydelk.com. So, reach out. There's links, there's free things on the website you can kind of download that are great tools that I've used to scale multiple $100 million businesses. The book is everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. So you can get the book anywhere. We did release it on Audible early part of this year, and David Goggins, publisher, same publisher as I. So if you've listened to Goggins' book, we had a professional narrator do the whole book. It's similar to Goggins. Like we had this podcast interview kind of thing after each chapter.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea. I'm going to buy your audiobook because I want to hear that. I love it.
Because it's more like behind the scenes. So I'm trying to shift more people to the Audible piece because it kind of gives you that other perspective of things that are just, it's good. Hopefully Goggins didn't beat me up for it. But I thought I found so much value for it because you hear the narrator's voice and that's what you hear. But then you go in to hear David talking about what was that really like. So I try to do something. So I'm not comparing my book to Goggins for the record, but that's what we did.
It's okay. It's a good book to compare it to. And it was really, I loved his books and I just listened to his last one on the way up to Canada with my family between Christmas and New Year's here this past year. And it sheds a different light on it. It gives a real heartfelt sense. So I look forward to, I'm going to listen to your book. So Without a Plan, available on audio, jeremydelk.com. We're going to have all the links in the show notes here. Jeremy, I look forward to connecting with you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with the audience today.
No, thanks so much. I'll definitely look you up when I get into Asheville. Appreciate it.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.